There's an interesting book called The Remembered Self by Jeff Singer and Peter Salovey. Peter Salovey is the guy that did a lot of the research and development in the concept of emotional intelligence, which later got popularized, and very interesting guy in terms of his thinking, both of these guys together. And so in The Remembered Self, they're kind of talking about how did this self get created? How do we create it? And one of the things that really comes up in it, and I use the term texture, that's not their term, but I tend to think that way, the texture of life and how our minds texturize things. But essentially, they talk about how we create these storylines, and they're developed from childhood, and we carry them with them. And these guys, in their practice as therapists, try to understand what is the storyline of an individual, the story of me, the story of myself. How do I tell that? And they listen to it. And what they're saying in the book is, instead of using Freudian techniques where we think that the real issues are hidden and we have to dig them up and dig down, and they just say, let's just listen to the story. Because you have a texture-mapped story that you have created and perfected. You have told it over and over again. And you've told it in many different ways. So now you go to your therapist and you tell the story of me. And they're listening to this thing, realizing that it's not necessarily true. It's just your version of self. And maybe there's a lot of poor me in it. Or maybe there's a lot of I'm the victim, or I'm the hero, or I'm wonderful. Who knows? You know, we texturize ourselves as we create the self unconsciously in a lot of different ways. And that's really what this book, The Remembered Self, is about, is how through our memories and through the way we process these memories and the way we conceptualize self, we create a self, and that self becomes self-perpetuating. And for people who get stuck in their depression and their poor me and so forth, it's really hard for them to get out of it. Because even when good things happen, they texturize it in such a way as they find a way to reconfirm what they believe is true. Now, Peter Senge, in the concept that he delivered in his book, it's a kind of a leadership book in which he talks about the ladder of inference. He talks about the fact that as we move up the ladder of inference, we get further and further away from the truth. We start to abstract through layers of abstraction new realities, and then we believe this, and then as we look at what's going on in the world, we find things that happen to confirm it. And so if another problem happens to me, I say, see, it always happens to me. Other people get all the breaks, all the problems happen to me. See? And we're looking for it. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as we texture this self and we say, this is who I am, through this story, we filter out evidence to the contrary, and we're continually looking for evidence that confirms what we believe. Well, this whole process, which is the process of creating a fictitious self that we believe to be true, which is the process by which we stay in a virtual reality world rather than experiencing the present moment, this whole process is a form of self-deception, which is often referred to by the term confabulation. Confabulation is the brain's ability to fill in gaps. When it can't explain what's going on, it fills in the gaps with a story. It immediately does this subconsciously. You don't even know that it's going on. But the ability to confabulate in your unconscious mind creates a self. It creates a world, a happy world, an unhappy world. A concept of your boss at work or the job that you have, the people that you live with. It texture maps the whole thing. It creates avatars in the place of real people. In real-time relationships and communication, we got to be here in the present moment with another person to feel where they are, to be able to find some sense of empathy, to find some sense of truth, to just experience life in the present. Instead of doing that, We're not with the real person. They're sitting in front of us, but we don't see them. We see a virtual reality world. We see a virtual reality person. And that's the person who we're really talking to, who we texture map. They're just a wire frame with a texture on it, just like 3D graphics. We're not really listening. We're not really feeling where they're coming from. We're treating them as objects. And in this object-oriented way of living, everything in life becomes objects, and we become the subject. The subject, the we, the I, the self, was unconsciously constructed through a confabulatory process of memories and mental, neurological synapses through the neurons in our brain, formulating and concocting a reality, and we can't seem to break through it because we get stuck in it. So what is living in the present moment? That's being able to see through the whole sham, to be able to see through the constructed self, all the stuff that's rising up, all these textures, to break them down. Peel off the textures that we put there. Dispense with the wire frames. Actually see another person. Actually see through this self. Actually feel what's going on. Actually live and be and breathe in a way in which, I guess, Krishnamurti tried to give this to us years ago, in which we're just looking at it, looking into it, and seeing what we see. As Eckhart Tolle talks about, all these mental constructs of how we perceive the world and reality and enlightenment, whatever it is, are nothing but pointers. If you look at the pointer, you're looking at the wrong thing. You look at what the pointer is pointing at. It's not a thing, it's not an object, it's just what is. And to see it, and be here, and live here, and experience it is a level of living that hopefully we're all coming to. That's sort of the next level of evolution of humanity, evolution of our thinking and our experience.